The first game was a slightly modified version of feasting and pillaging. So that's the scenario with the 3 objectives on the middle line, and then you essentially try and capture it and take it to your board edge for extra points, or just to hold it for I think 3 points if you just hold it, and then 6 points if you capture the objective and take it back to your board edge. The original scenario, you can actually take it off the board edge. You lose your unit. Here you can't actually take it off the board. Furthermore, there's a you had to have a swamp in the middle of the board. Except for that, I don't think there was anything else. Starting off with the game, I was playing against Max. He was a really nice fellow to play against. I hadn't played for several months. He hadn't played for a year, so we're both quite rusty. And we just kind of took it easy. And it was generally a really fun game and a great opponent. So we could set up the terrain with the exception of the swamp in the middle. As you can see, we both kind of tried to funnel our opponent's troops towards the middle, and I think the hill in the bottom left is a steep hill, so that's uneven terrain. So also the deployment is M from the board edge, so you really don't have a lot of space to deploy in depth, so that's why we essentially just deployed in a long straight line. Going from left to right, I have at the bottom is my Pagan Rus army. We have 8 warriors, 6 warriors, I think that's 10 warriors, then a unit of 2 points of Hearthguard next to my warlord, and in the bottom right, the unit of scouts. Special rule there is they get a free activation to move. They can move through uneven terrain as if it's open terrain, and a difficult terrain or dangerous terrain as it's uneven terrain. And also if a enemy unit finishes within M of them, they can have a free move in the opponent's turn. So my choice for taking them was that the Pagan Rus, I feel, always struggle with having enough dice to do both their fancy abilities and doing some basic moves. So just having a unit of scouts allows you to have a relatively mobile unit for picking up objectives and harassing people with a little bit of shooting, while not actually having any, to spend any dice to activate them. So that's quite fun. Also, being able to move away in the opponent's turn is always quite frustrating, especially if you can move through terrain quite easily, as these scouts can do. So, I think my opponent had the first turn. He was quite cautious. He moved up a little bit using the maneuver ability. I think he should have pushed up a lot more, since as a Pagan Rus I can control the movement a lot more. So this is just the setup. Nothing special there. You can see the 3 objectives in the middle of the board. Alright, so my opponent moved up, just using his maneuver, so he's not actually that far away from the board edge. I'd played this scenario before, so I knew you had to go up and get the objectives. Also, as second player, I feel like this gives you a lot of advantage in the scenario, since you can always recover an objective right at the end and your opponent can't do anything about it. So that's why I pushed up. I was planning on doing some the blizzard and the frozen winds to control his movement a little bit, so I thought it wasn't too bad if I actually had a fatigue on me. So here in the middle you can see the Hearthguard. They've just avoided the swamp. I'm going to move sideways the shortest distance to be able to touch the objective. On the top right corner you can see the scouts. They just ran through the woods easily, since it doesn't slow them, just to pick up the objective there. Same thing, just a slightly different angle. You can see we're now relatively close. My opponent actually used some of his dice to push up a large warrior unit in front of the objective there, and so it's at this moment he's got 1 objective, and I have 1 with the scouts, and I've got 2 units next to the middle objective, which I think it looks like that we're gonna fight over quite heavily. So this is what my opponent had on board: a few movement activations and some nice combat abilities. So he pushes up his warlord and his berserkers, obviously going to see how he can, how many warriors he can kill. I had played the Frozen Wind, so that's why I think he's got some fatigues on his units, and also using Blizzard and Biting Cold, I managed to completely shut down the berserkers, and which means they can't actually reach my warriors. In my turn, I push up, take the middle objective. Since it's dangerous terrain, they pick up a fatigue, but they're relatively safe since moving into dangerous terrain is not really something you want to do. It also slows you down. I think this is same turn again. Yeah, as you can see, this is pretty much standard. I rolled one rare, I put it on white wolves, and then pretty much all the time I would put dice down on Blizzard, Biting Cold, and Frozen Wind. So as you can see, that's already 5 dice down, which is why another reason why I think the scouts were such a good idea to take. So in this turn, I believe this is turn, I think this is turn 2, my turn 2. My opponent moved up his levy, took 2 shots at my Hearthguard. I believe he killed 2 of them with some good shooting in two rounds of shooting. Again, I've managed to shut down his berserkers completely with Biting Cold and the Blizzard. I put the Blizzard on the warrior unit, which means that anything that the berserkers would charge would be difficult terrain, which would reduce their charge range to short, and then they would require 2 activations to get anywhere, so I could shut them down using Biting Cold. So that was a very useful combo. Just anything they would have to do would take 2 activations. Therefore, basically, it's completely hopeless to get them anywhere. I didn't really want to get close to the berserkers since he had some abilities, and just even if they're unbuffed with no advanced activations, it's still really painful to get into contact with them. At the bottom of the screen there, you can see my scouts are having a good time just running back to their corner, taking some fatigue, but no big deal there. As long as they don't get into contact, nobody really cares. So another shot of the middle. Everyone's got fatigue. I've partially taking my Hearthguard out of the swamp now, and they're trying to get back to their side of the table. As you can see here, I've moved my Hearthguard way back. I think they have 2 fatigues on them now. I think it's blocked by one of the trees, but they're relatively safe. I've moved my Warlord behind the warriors, since they're out of, he'll be difficult to shoot from the javelins, and just generally plugged the gap to protect my Hearthguard from the berserkers with my small unit of warriors there. In my opponent's turn, I didn't see this one coming, but my opponent decided to charge with his warlord into my large warrior unit, which was a little bit suicidal. He had to take 2 movements, so that's why he starts with a fatigue. He uses pretty much all of these abilities, so Njal, Uller, Thor, I think Njord as well. I think he might play that at the end actually, and Valhalla, so he's got loads of dice. He also wipes out my unit to almost to the man. And at the end he has 2 fatigues, one for the movement and one for the combat. And then he decides to charge in the warlord now, which is kind of out in the open. So he starts his combat. he starts his combat exhausted. Since the unit was not completely wiped out, I got really lucky in this game. He got into combat with 2 units, and each time my units survived with 1 model, which was perfect since I wouldn't take any fatigue. So in this combat, I did not have any fatigue. I don't think I decided, since he was exhausted anyways, he was going to hit me on 6s. I think I used the White Wolves to lower my defense to 4s, but get 4 defense dice and 4 additional attack dice. I think that was overkill, but I just want to get rid of him, especially now that he's exhausted. So this combat, I don't think I didn't take any damage, and I think I rolled quite well and completely wiped out his warlord. Then my opponent decided to charge in the berserkers into my other unit of warriors. Unsurprisingly, the unit of berserkers was wiped out. However, my unit of 6 warriors actually managed to survive with 1 warrior again. So again, no fatigue for any of the units around. So I got pretty lucky there, and it's not a bad trade-off. This is how it looks at the end of, I think it's turn 4. I managed to shut down his levy and his large group of warriors in the right-hand corner just by giving them fatigue, using the frozen winds. He's retreated his unit with the objective towards his table edge. I've kind of castled up in the opposite corner, out of shot here, but right at the bottom right hand side of the table. My scouts are now touching the table edge for the maximum number of points with the objective, and I think I need I need 1 turn to get my Hearthguard back to the table edge, giving me the two objectives with full points. So the middle of the table is looking a little bit empty at the moment, but I think we decided to call it at this point. I think we had about an hour left. It was not actually that much combat in the end, but it was pretty obvious that we weren't going to engage anymore, and I would just be able to shut down his remaining his units trying to come towards me using Frozen Wind and Biting Cold. So at this point we decided to call it, and I had won. I'd also killed his warlord, so that gave me maximum points of 6 for this round, and 1 point from my opponent. So it was a lot of fun. He's really good sport. We had I had a good time at the table with him. So thanks a lot for the game, Max.